This is Kick Legend. Today we're going to talk about working on your trapping out of a kickboxing structure. So welcome to Kick Legend. I'm happy to last night's put our team fight. Here, delighted once again to be with my friend and teacher Cornwell at MKG DETROIT. Please check out their new space. It's awesome. Depending on when I release this, go check out his TED Talk when it drops. I'll put some links to it, to the content he's building up. One thing I love about Kurt, he's a very thoughtful martial artist, so I'm really looking forward to what he has to say at that event.
Trapping for me is really a couple of core things, and within the MKG method, we focused on like 5 or 6 main reasons that you're going to trap. You're creating space for a hit, you're creating an opportunity where you get to use your more major tools like elbows, knees, headbutts, that kind of thing. Especially if you look at personalities and figures like Paul Vunak, you really get this look at, okay, yeah, here's somebody that's using trapping just to make space so he can put his head through your face. And boy, even in a kickboxing context, now in a competitive one, you can't do that. But if you are having to fight somebody who has that skill set, that's going to work really well. So yeah, there's a lot of different reasons you're going to use their energy against them and all these different things. I love that. Sifu Rikfe, one of his reasons for trapping, it's usually the last one we point out, is that you're just going to end up there anyways, right? It's kind of inevitable. So in that regard, it's important to understand what trapping is in this context or for your context, right? And so it could be that if we're here and we're just trying to swim into the clinch, that's trapping. I was saying to Roy before, this is trapping. The clinch itself is trapping. If I'm trying to move his body out of the way, but I put my hand or my foot on his foot, that's foot trapping, as is this part, as was that first initial beat. All of that is trapping. Watch fighters like Lomachenko. Now, they may not call it trapping or call it Wing Chun or something, and in that regard it isn't. But when the hand is up and it's moved out of the way like that so you create that space for a hit, yeah, same thing, right? So whether you're calling that, Loy Pak or Lap Sao, or you're calling it something from Silat, or you're calling it whatever Lomachenko calls it, or whatever, it's all the same principle. And so the principles are the things that you look for. So one of those principles is removing a barrier to your positive strike. So if I want to create a gap to put my right hand in, but this is in the way, then that means I've got to do something to remove that. And I might have to learn then to make that negative motion where I'm only creating space, to learn to make that about twice as fast as the punch. Right? If my rhythm is 1, 2, yeah, right, he's going to hit on 2. I need this to be half and half like that, right? It has to still be one beat so that it comes pretty abruptly. So in that regard, this is easier bare knuckle, but with the natural shape, the nature of the glove itself, you can still kind of cut this onto the wrist. Is I'm actually drawing my fingers over top of his wrist and moving it down in the direction of my near side hip, my lead hip. So it's just a little popping motion. It's really a jut cell from the inside, if you're familiar with some of those terms. So that I'm drawing this down in that direction. When I move it down, you see his shoulder comes forward. If it happens abruptly, you'll see his chin come up a little bit. Usually it does, or his head will go down. But nevertheless, you'll see the head move, right? And when the head moves, then you've got this sort of oncoming traffic effect for the head. So 1, we're negating this barrier, and 2, we're helping to put the head in a position where it feels easier to hit. So that's worth exploring. It's just here like this, right? I don't want to exhaust that right hand with something like Pak Sao right away. At least that's not the first one we're looking at, because this is the one I want to hit with. So that means this has to be the one that makes space. Now, it doesn't mean he doesn't have a second hand to defend himself with, but if he does, then maybe my whole intent was to hit with this one. So if I see 2 barriers, I think I want to hit you with this hand. I'm going to put these pieces in motion so that he defends it good. I got my shot, right? That's what I was looking for the whole time. Now, if this one scores instead, cool, great. It was a very power hand anyways. But that's how you start to intellectualize your perspective on this, is I'm kind of going, no, this thing is going to hit you, and all the rest of this nonsense that's happening is all just part of the chess match. So we want 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, like that. That, here. Boom, that one. Now, sometimes you can bait this hand with that one, or you can pump it, right? So if we're here like this, and I'm trying to elicit that response, when I get it, I just use this one as well. Back, like that. 1 and 2. If his parry is small here, then I'm going to wind up right over top. If I can allow that beat to happen quick, then I can stall both hands for just like a half a beat. And now we're talking about really small units of time, like really small. So I'm speaking as if this is a completely normal, natural, easy thing to pull off, because it's up to you to put in the flight time and see if it's going to work for you. I'm not saying it is that simple. It certainly isn't. But it is certainly doable, right? Easy and impossible are not the same thing. These concepts are very simple, but simple and easy are not the same thing. So the concept is simple. Remove a barrier, punch that dude in the face. Very simple. But pulling it off takes some time. So we've got 1 here, or we've got 1 and we elicit that response and hit here, or 1 and we just pump fake that a little bit and hit over top. And you certainly can combine those things and do both, which is one of the reasons you have straight lefts in your arsenal.
I just wanted to mention that that pull, see how it's turning it? I mean, that's delaying this shot, right?
Yes, it's making that shoulder turn away just a little bit.
Yeah. So I want to keep this like short, I guess, and digestible for now. But like, you notice, I think, yeah, step 1 is like initiating before I'm doing anything, right? Because you have almost the most control over that situation, right? When the guy's just kind of waiting for, because once he starts throwing, kind of reacting what he's doing and trapping on the fly, that's really cool, but I'd say that maybe slightly more challenging.
Yeah, there's a difference in trapping a vertical fist and a horizontal fist. And the difference is pretty big, right? Yeah. And so if your box out is this really nice sort of centerline motion, but you have a horizontal punch, it's really easy to slide off this and just eat that shot. You probably should have just buried a little bit or caught that or whatever, right? So you now went here like that and you're in mid-punch, right? So it's not a good look. So it's harder to do that than you think. That's one of the reasons I like this, because I'm just redirecting it. But if your hands are static, 1, that's very easy, but 2, so is that, right? So you could also use that. So we break the attack into thirds. So you've got the first third, which is anywhere from non-movement to the first third of, like the end of that first third of the movement. Then there's the middle third, and then that final extension in whatever way your punching gets delivered. And so you need to be in that first one. The second one is this sort of no man's land thing, and by that last third of the motion, you should already be in flight for your counter shot, right? So that means that if you're in that last third of the punch, I'm going to actually trap on retraction. I'm going to wait for that to go back, and then I chase it, right? So you usually learn box out in a couple of different ways. One is static, one is in flight, which is on extension, and then one is after on retraction. And so if you can learn to break these motions into thirds, that will help you kind of discern, all right, what works best for this part of the motion versus this part.
What I really like about trying to find this in boxing is you learn pretty quickly, the angle that's going to work.
Yeah.
Right? I think Kurt was, check out one of his more detailed instructional videos in his channel where he's talking about some of the problems of like maybe box outing too down, right? Where it just doesn't quite work and like just nothing's happening, right? Or I'm not disrupting the other person enough. So it's just like, the face I see on people's faces when I'm trying this and quite frankly, screwing it up, I was going to use a different word, is just confusion, but not concern.
Interesting.
Because I'm not, like, when I get it, because we don't go hard, there's maybe not a ton of concern anyway, but there's a certain amount of like, oh, there's a fist flying at my face now that I'm not going to block. Whereas there's sometimes if I'm doing it wrong, they're just kind of waiting to see what happens because they know there's no threat. They don't feel a disruption. They know they could just like, do whatever they need to do.
And not every skill set is appropriate to use against every practitioner. Sure. And so using some of these things against boxing and kickboxing, it's not necessarily why they were developed, right? You see arts like silat are really good examples of that too. There's going to be some combative elements that are really great that you should be able to spar with so you get some ability to actually generate those under pressure. But the context is totally different. And so, you know, if Bruce Lee was learning to use trapping or some of his techniques against somebody who's a boxer, first of all, he might have tried to kick their legs or to grapple them or something like that because they're a boxer. He's not wanting to stand in boxing range with them. but also it's maybe that the hand immobilization is going to be the first thing that he goes to, right? Because it's harder to pull it off against somebody. It's really hard to do this motion against someone with a quick jab, right? It's just not going to work for us. That's an inappropriate use of that tool, right? You're using a Phillips head screwdriver and you needed a flathead. You're using a Phillips head screwdriver, you needed a hammer, right? That's just not the right thing. So it's important to keep those things in mind. All of these techniques, like any technique, is wonderful in a vacuum and is worth time examining. But the most important part, if your interest is in applying them, is learning where, like what oven those things were really baked inside of and what they're meant to be used for, right? What's the cultural context in which they were created and what's the intended application for them. Then along the way you can play. So if we're here in clinch, maybe I have some sort of inside trapping thing that helps me create space here and to grab. And so now these are things that I can definitely use, and you'll see them in Thai boxing or anything else, again, going by different names or with slightly different affectation. Well, that slightly different affectation is specifically how you use that trap in that context. That's why it works there when this method doesn't, right?
Yeah, I think, like for me, it's just, you gotta play with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think you'll figure out, like, yeah, this isn't working, and it's about, like, is it because this is not appropriate versus I'm just doing it wrong.
Right.
I think that's the tricky part, right? Or is this working 100% because it's just surprising?
Yeah.
Which by the way, has value.
Totally. If it scores, it scores,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, so if Bruce Lee's developing these things to fight somebody, he's talking about running into a boxer on the street, right? These two guys have an argument and it's about to kick off, and he puts some probing shot out and realizes, oh, that guy's a boxer, right? And so now he's going to make his strategy on the fly about that. But that's different than two boxers getting in a ring. Totally different context, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's important to laboratory all of these tools, but to also kind of, I think, predetermine what your context is before you know, like what kind of lab are you engaged in, and then try this stuff out. And just remember that, you know, if we're working a motion like this, where we're swinging around or we're removing these barriers, this swing is my hook, right? And if that's the barrier I run into with that hook, then I'm gonna get in here and hit. And so that's maybe a tool that could cross into the ring and back out again, where it was something that's more of like this double tap that has a lot of this quick percussive stuff. You can't do that with a boxing glove, right? That's why Bruce Lee had the fingered gloves and all those things. It's the only way that's going to work, and so the context is going to really influence it.
All right, so I want to thank Kurt for just sharing his thoughts and time with us. And yeah, I mean, try it out, right? I think the couple of things that Kurt suggested have, like, high probability of getting some mileage out of just in that laboratory and in that context, right? Where you just, just play. Like for me, it's just playing and having fun, right? And again, check out his channel. He's got a lot more long-form content these days, which I really like. You can see how Kurt breaks things down and gives the details that I think really will bring out the functionality of a lot of this stuff for you. And of course, keep an eye out for his TED Talk. So this is Cornwell of MKG Legend here at MKG Detroit. Keep your chin down, elevate your striking.